Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for the next session in our Festivals and Events Learning Series. Debbie Mann from Festivals and Events Ontario is going to be our host this morning. And I just wanted to say welcome on behalf of GMIST. And I'm going to pass things right over to Debbie so we can get right underway here this morning. Over to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nora. Always great to be here with you and bringing interesting speakers to the table for you. And today we have Kate Johnston from Hillside Festival. Good morning, Kate. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to share about Hillside Festival.
You're welcome. Now, Kate's been a part of Festivals and Events Ontario. Hillside Festival's been a part of Festivals and Events Ontario for many, many years. They're an award-winning festival, a very sustainable and sustainable event, and it's really interesting to go to the Hillside site and experience what they've created from a sustainable perspective. Kate's been there for a few years now, right? Kate, you've
Yeah.
been, yeah, has been the executive director of Hillside Festival and comes with a great background in that, which I'm sure she's going to cover in her presentation. And I'm just going to pass it over to you, Kate. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom and knowledge to the East Coast.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Debbie. And yeah, no, I really appreciate the opportunity. And I'm also thrilled to talk to some Maritimers. I'm actually my family's from Grand Manan Island in New Brunswick, and before I moved back to Ontario, to which is where I did grow up, but with my grandparents in New Brunswick, I was working on Grand Manan and Campobello Island and St. Andrews, New Brunswick. So I miss the East Coast, but glad to be here working on Hillside Festival as well. I'm going to share some slides. Once I do that, I won't be able to see so many folks. So if you'd like to, we're such a small group. If you have a question, I would encourage you to just ask it or ask it in the chat. But if you're waving your hand at me, I probably won't see you because the Zoom will like reduce the amount of like faces that I can see. So just put that question in the chat or just speak up. That would be perfectly fine. So just let me get my presentation going. Debbie, can you give me a thumbs up that everybody can see that? Great. Yeah, so what I'd like to do is just share some information, sort of some lessons from Hillside Festival, which is a festival that's going into its 43rd year, excuse me, in Guelph, Ontario. And what I hope that this is just an example of the tools and tactics that an event like this, like a large outdoor music festival, have taken in order to reduce their environmental impact and become a more sustainable festival. Not everything works for everyone, but I hope that from this presentation today, you could maybe take one or two or more things that, to say like, that's the seed of something that could work for me. That's something that I'd like to learn more about. So that's the spirit that I've put this together today. Oh, there we go. So, Hillside Festival, 43 years old. We are a music festival that has a real emphasis on diversity of artistic presentation, on community building, environmentalism, and sustainability. So, I love this picture because it really shows the footprint of Hillside Festival. If anyone's familiar with Guelph, Ontario, it's a city of about 150,000 people, about an hour west of Toronto. But the festival itself takes place in a conservation area. It's about 10 kilometers north of Guelph. And it takes place on an island. And as you can see, here's our island. This is Guelph Lake Island. This island actually was created in the 60s. So this is the river, the Speed River, was dammed in the 1960s to create hydroelectric power for the city of Guelph. So Guelph Lake Island was created, and that's actually really interesting, sort of part of our origin story. It's interesting when we talk about things like use of the land and reconciliation, and it's such an interesting metaphor. Actually, I think when we start to think about like that our festival footprint itself is a finite resource. It's and you can take that metaphor to extend out towards our use of everything in this world, that being a finite resource. We cannot expand beyond the confines of this footprint. We need to make the best use of this space that we can, and I think you can draw lines of metaphor and conversation beyond that. Just again, yeah, this look at our footprint here. It's a little bit skewed because of the angle that this drone footage is taking, but our entire festival takes place here, as you can see. So it's about half of the island is used for festival programming. So that's our 5 stages. That's all of the food, the artisan crafts, the workshop, the programming for children. And then about a quarter of it is parking that you can see on the left, and then about a quarter of it, which looks a little bit bigger, but I'd say about a quarter of it is used for camping. Camping is allowed on the island for members of our volunteer program, and then there is a causeway, so I suppose it's not a proper island, but there is camping on the mainland, as it were, for about 2 to 3,000 people. That's managed by the Conservation Authority. Oh, my keyboard won't advance. There we go. Just a little bit more about the origins of Hillside and our sort of sustainability initiatives. Um, Absolutely, the sustainability aspects of Hillside were like baked in from the very beginning. And this has a lot to do with Guelph as a community. I'm not sure if anyone here has been to Guelph, has any family there, maybe went to university there. Sustainability and environmentalism is a really strong value in that community, and it's something so you can see that from the very origins of the festival when in this sort of heyday of those community-based festivals in the 70s and 80s. A lot of that stuff was sort of came in from the very beginning. The idea of reducing waste, the idea of having recyclable things, of using reusable when you can. You can see things today like like Guelph is one of the greenest cities in Canada. It's aiming to be a net carbon zero city by 2050. The leader of the Ontario Green Party is a member of provincial parliament from Guelph, so there's a lot of like community connection there when it comes to talking about sustainability. And as Debbie mentioned, Hillside has had a lot of recognition and a lot of award winning for its sustainability initiatives, which I don't need to go into today. So I divide up our keys to sustainability into 4 main streams. The first being getting them in and getting them out, them being, of course, people, but also supplies. As you saw, like our festival is in a rural area, so we need to when we don't own that land, we rent it from the Conservation Authority, so we need to build that festival site from scratch every single year. So getting in the supplies and infrastructure that we need, and then of course getting the people in who are attending the event. The second being food, drink, and dishes. We welcome about 8,000 people per day to Hillside Festival, and so that's a lot of supplies needed to have people eating and drinking over the duration of the weekend. We need to talk about sorting the trash, sorting the things that are used, the things that are generated for waste, and the fourth key being how we communicate and how we talk about our green culture. So those are sort of the four mainstreams that we'll talk about today. So starting with equipment and supplies. So again, rural conservation area, about 10 kilometers north of Guelph. Absolutely no infrastructure in terms of like a public transit system or anything like that that leads you up to this conservation area. So what we try to do is when we are moving, sorry, my Zoom companion dog has decided he's not happy with my presentation. He's going to leave. When we talk about moving items around our site and when we're building, we try to emphasize electric where we can. If we're renting gators and golf carts, they're going to be electric and they're not going to be gas powered. We have a number of, use of human power, rickshaws and bicycle carts, an example, which you can see on the right there, to move things around the site that doesn't involve gas powered vehicles. It doesn't involve things that are going to create any emissions. During the festival itself, we have a partnership with an electric car dealership. It's good that market and that sort of interest in those kinds of projects is a product, especially when gas is cresting, $1.70. Certainly, that's what it is here in Southern Ontario. That there's interest in sponsorship and interest in marketing those products. So it makes it easier to form those relationships and have partnerships with zero emissions vehicles at the festival. So building the site is still an intense effort. It's still something that requires emissions of some kind, but we try to mitigate where we can. And then, of course, there's our people. There's our people who are setting up the site and tearing it down, but then our attendees as well. This is typically, if you're talking about carbon emissions and environmental impact, in the arts and culture world, the travel of an audience to an arts and cultural event is typically the biggest emitter of carbon, like the biggest source of any kind of environmental impact. So, and Hillside Festival again, brings about 8,000 people per day. That's about 50% are from Guelph and region, but about 50% are from 40 kilometers away or more. They're from the Greater Toronto area. They're from within Ontario, and we draw um, uh, a fair number of attendees from wider within Canada and also in North America as well. So our bus is our main and most successful way of transporting people in a way that is more environmentally sustainable. And it has, and of course, often when we're talking about these efforts, you can make achievements in sustainability, and often that means you're also making achievements in accessibility and in making things just more appealing and accessible to people. So we do offer parking at Hillside Festival. You have to pay for your parking. But we have a free shuttle bus link that is through a partnership with the city buses in the city of Guelph, so Guelph Transit, that runs directly all day, every day from Guelph Central Station, which is kind of the main hub of transit within the city, and it's also a link with the Via Rail system in Ontario and the Go Rail system in Ontario. So rather than having a remote parking area where people can park out in an industrial site and we shuttle them in. It is downtown Guelph. It's linked to all those other transit links to be able to catch this free bus that leads you up to Hillside Festival. The city buses are wonderful because they're fully accessible. They are accessible to strollers, to bicycles, to wagons, to any mobility devices. They're also air conditioned and electric, which makes them a very popular place to be after like a hot, sweaty day in Ontario July sunshine. And so that's a way that we've been able to really cut down the number of people who are driving to our festival and really encourage people to take a more sustainable mode of transportation. Biking is also a really important part, and actually, and again, like the city of Guelph has a lot of interest in bicycling, and typically much higher proportion of Guelph residents bike than the municipal average. So we see about 15% of our audience biking from the city of Guelph out to Hillside Festival, and so we facilitate this by offering there's free and secure bike valet parking, as it were, on the festival site. There's volunteers and resources for light bike maintenance. If you need to have any sort of repair done to your bicycle while you're at Hillside Festival. And we even offer, so our festival runs from about 10 or 11 in the morning and ends at 11 p.m. at night. So it's quite dark. And again, it's a rural conservation area, so it's dark when the festival ends. So we actually offer a OPP, provincial police escorted bike ride from the festival back to the city of Guelph, so that everyone can safely ride their bikes from the festival back to the city, and doesn't need to feel uncomfortable riding their bikes in the dark and on the dark conservation area roads. We have a boat access as well. This is more an experiential add to the festival, given that we do have a causeway access to the island. Can be very busy. It's a single lane road, so obviously people and bicycles and hand-powered carts going over the causeway means that it's quite busy. So we do offer a boat link that can take, in particular, performers and artists and their equipment by boat from the mainland through a very short jaunt over the Guelph Lake over to the island, which is just more of a way of transmitting that there's an alternate way of transportation, and it's also an experience as well that often is highlighted by artists when they are talking about their festival experience. And by car, as I say, we do offer parking as an option at Hillside Festival, but you must pay for it, and it's quite far away from the festival site. And again, we offer those free and accessible shuttle bus links from the parking area to the festival itself. So over to food, drink, and dishes. So we offer food. There's about between 30 and 40 food vendors at Hillside Festival. They all need to sign on and be part of our food philosophy. And this is something that it seems, if I like when I talk to festival presenters, I talk to my peers, it seems it seems hard to implement something like this, but and Hillside Festival has been doing this for a long time, and we have long-standing existing relationships with food vendors. But what I always want to say is that the food vendors want to be at the festival. They want to be there. They want to be serving to the public. And so, saying that you have a food philosophy or saying that you have agreements and requirements are going to be something that they're interested in knowing about. So, for example, at Hillside, the agreements and requirements of food vendors would be first and foremost that they will sign on to our dish system. We have an entirely reusable dish system, which I'll talk about more in a bit, and that they also adopt our food philosophy, which is that we have absolutely no franchise food vendors at Hillside. We really encourage food to be locally sourced, to be primarily vegetarian. There is meat served at Hillside, but we aim for about 80% vendors offering vegetarian meals, and maybe three or four food vendors offering a meat option. Just in that recognition that the cultivation and preparation of meat is often a very carbon intensive process. And so a lot of work goes into ensuring that a food vendor, particularly a new food vendor, is completely aware of the requirements, that there's no surprises come festival time, and that they are interested and aligned with what we are trying to do. Over to beverages. So we absolutely so single-use plastics are not permitted at all at Hillside Festival. We definitely encourage bring your own drink container. There is free tap water available at Hillside Festival. This is something actually the festival designed and created its own water tanker back in the 1990s to be able to fill reusable water bottles. However, it's really great to see that like a lot of municipalities are building these and are making them available for local events. So now we have no need to maintain and own our own water tanker. The city of Guelph has its own, you know, large water tanker that it fills with water and sends to various community events. So it's lovely to see that we can just partner with them, have them roll in and provide free tap water that's available throughout our whole festival weekend. We do serve alcohol at Hillside Festival. We have a number of licensed areas. The whole festival is not licensed. And we were able to eliminate, aluminum can waste and eliminate single-use drink containers by having custom-built beer trailers. So all of the alcoholic beverages that are served at Hillside are kegged, and we partner with our local breweries. Honestly, we couldn't. I think this is really a through line of my presentation. There's so much that we couldn't do if we didn't have like long-standing partnerships and a lot of creativity from various industries to help us achieve our goals. Because our local breweries help to ensure that any alcohol provider, any brewery or winery or cidery is kegging their product so that it can be served through our custom beer trailers at the festival. To receive an alcoholic beverage, you have to have a specific reusable stainless steel mug, and you can see a couple of examples there in the top left and on the right. Um, those are so that's how we can be compliant with the AGCO, the alcohol permit that we have for the festival, to ensure that our serving sizes are consistent and that we are following all good practices of alcoholic service. So in this way, so everyone has their custom reusable mug for alcohol. All alcoholic beverages are served on tap and not in a can, not in a throwaway cup. And in that way, we have sort of built this way of alcohol service that is very low waste and something that is also like an artifact. Like people are very proud of their Hillside mug. They with the carabiner, they clip it on their belt. We've made it kind of a sustainability requirement, and we've made it an experience as well. There have been a couple of iterations of the mug over the years, and like people are convinced that the mug that was white in like 2008 and 2009, they're convinced that it holds 10 milliliters more. So like they're like quite a collector's item, and that people like bring their mugs back year to year. So again, marrying that experience with that sustainability effort is what we've done there. So back to the dishes, washing the dishes. So Hillside Festival owns an entire inventory of dishes, cups, tableware, everything that we would need. As you can see, not fancy. They're fun and friendly, and that's part of the program, because if they were fancier looking, if they had our logo on them, we know that they would walk away more often than they do already. So this is something that's been part of Hillside Festival since the mid 90s, having dishwashing infrastructure at the festival. So it's completely designed and built every year with the full cooperation of our local public health. So we actually own all of the infrastructure to build, um, you know, proper dishwashing stations, as you can see there in the top picture. 3 dishwashing stations that we have set up at the festival, and it's entirely staffed by volunteers. Between 100 and 120 volunteers will assist with washing dishes for 8,000 people over the course of the weekend. I actually think this is a super volunteer job because we actually, we don't hide this away. The dishwashing station is actually right out and it's noticeable. And actually, you kind of have a view of the main stage when you're volunteering. So I always think if I'm going to volunteer at Hillside, this is where I'd want to be. You're under a tent. You got your, you can be in the nice sudsy water and you can also enjoy music on the main stage. I think it's great. And so we have one central dishwashing location. Dishes are continually being ferried from, we have our public, food court and use of food dishes. We have, of course, hospitality for our volunteers, hospitality for our performers. So there's lots of like movement of dishes, clean and dirty around the site, ensuring the dirty dishes are coming in for cleaning and then being transmitted back out to points where they can be used. Just a note about, because of course, washing dishes requires hot water. Um, at Hillside Festival, this is again through the ingenuity and dedication of a few specific volunteers. We've designed our own sort of DIY solar water heater. So we use solar power to heat hot water for the dishwashing area. And this slide here is an example, that we have a hot water generating system. But also, I think it speaks to this is actually a spread from Alternatives Journal from 2010, so quite a while ago now. But I think that what it speaks to is that Hillside Festival, and I think this is something that hopefully folks find, throughout the arts and culture world, particularly the not-for-profit world, that people want to help each other. People want to share what they're doing. They want to share their best practices. So this is an example of, how our hot water system is designed, but also in that, we are very happy to be promoting and sharing information about how we've done this at our event. So that others can learn and do and make achievements in that area as well. But then, of course, there's the trash. So we have at Hillside, we have our trash turnaround systems, and so we have about 50 or 60, designated locations that look just like this in this picture. And it has 4 streams. As you can see from the left, compost, the second being dishes, the third recyclables, and the fourth landfill. So you find these everywhere. That's such an important point. I think we all know that when you're running any kind of event, you're running even in our own small towns and municipalities, there needs to be places to put your items, and it needs to be clearly marked what you should do. Because I think it was even something like Disney World did a study on, it's like if something is too far away or if it's too close, it's too confusing what you're supposed to do with this item, it's much more likely that someone will just put it in the wrong place or just drop it on the ground altogether. So that's an important part of the sort of the ubiquity of having very clear and understandable things to do with the items that you don't want. You need to get rid of them. What do we do with those items? So again, we're managing those 4 streams of waste. So in every single one of those touch points, there's a place to put your dirty dishes, and we have again volunteer crews continually circling around and doing collection. We are collecting items for recycling. That's a third party. We would contract a company to collect our recycling and take it away. And same with our landfills. There is still garbage generated at Hillside. We try to reduce it where we can, but some items still do go to landfill. And so, we are gathering that, we are sorting that, and again, have a third party rental company to take that away. And dishes as well. So our waste management volunteers, again, that's another huge crew in our volunteer program, about 100 to 150 people. We'll be continually circling and cycling throughout the festival site with those hand carts that you can see in the bottom picture. Taking away full bins, replacing them with empty bins, ensuring that our trash turnarounds are kept in good order. This is one area where I think it's an amazing place to start if you are thinking about, how can I make my event more low waste? How can we make it more sustainable? Of having lots and clear instructions for what to do with waste, and even posting volunteers at the waste collection points. Hillside did that for many years, for probably about 10 years. We would have a volunteer at every single trash collection point, helping people understand, what should go where, um, and just making that sort of a communications piece. And I think what I can share is that, when you do that, like at a certain point, you won't have to do that anymore. At Hillside Festival, we no longer need to position any volunteers at the trash turnarounds. We don't have any problems with people contaminating because we've invested in that education piece and that communication piece over time. So it is something that, is doable, and it is something that over time you can then, people who attend an event will become used to the methods and the procedures that you have in place. So just a little bit about communication, about sustainability. So I mentioned this, back when I was talking about transportation, buses and parking. Something that we find, again, we know that being sustainable is important to the audience, and we know that efforts. If we're going to talk about our efforts in sustainability, our audiences are going to receive that favorably. Like that's a value for them. That's important. But it's always been important to us to sort of to be measurable and to be able to tie an action to a result. So for example, we have no free parking. You have to pay for parking. It's $10 for a day or $25 for a weekend. It's not something that's, exorbitant. But we say like your parking fee goes directly to pay for the free accessible shuttle bus that runs from downtown Guelph. So, if there's something that is a bit more effort or it's a bit of a cost, we can say, because you're doing this, this is the result. It's like there's tying a direct sort of action or a cost to a result, which I just think is a good communication strategy because sometimes our sustainability efforts are more effortful or they cost more. And so it's good to be able to have that we're doing this because sort of statement. And being measurable, being able to measure year over year, how much landfill are we generating? How much recycling are we generating? So that we can track successes and also be aware from an operational standpoint of, is there an area that maybe needs a little bit more attention that, people are changing in how they're interacting with it. So that's an important part of our operations in this kind of sphere. Again, building that, it goes right back to the origins of Hillside, building that sort of sustainable and environmentalism message into, we are a music festival. We're about arts and culture and creativity and bringing people together, but we're also about environmentalism and making sure that that is, kind of ubiquitous throughout all of our promotional material on our website and on our app. So these are some examples of posters. So often our promotional material is linked to, the land that we're on, like what it's like to gather on an island, what kind of the popular sustainability messages or pieces of education we might want to share. I actually, if this works, yeah, great. This is actually our artwork for 2026. We only released this yesterday. And so I think it's actually a really great example because some years, we Hillside is really unique in that we commission a new piece of artwork every year. So we kind of change our colors and our branding every single year. In some ways, it's a terrible idea and it makes things really challenging sometimes. But it is really neat when we get to like release this beautiful piece of art. And if you go to our website, you can read the artist statement in full. But it was absolutely amazing this year. The artist who was selected, they created what we encouraged was because it was the sense of community, and what the artist interpreted that was like community through biodiversity. So all of the flora and fauna that you see in the design and is like specific to Guelph Lake. The artist did research on like what species are find a home in Guelph Lake, which ones are under threat, and like specifically like put them in this drawing. And so even when we're promoting the festival, when we're saying Hillside is coming, it has these great bands, it has this great experience, we're also sort of sharing that message of biodiversity and conservationism and that's all sort of tied together. So I just wanted the chance to show our artwork from yesterday because I thought it was great. Another really important communication piece is limiting options. I think that that's something, it's just a good practice. I think anytime that we're trying to change behavior or trying to sort of implement something that is different, um, that, at our food in our food vending or our drink vending, as my two examples here, it's like, oh, you can use this reusable plate or you can use this single use plate. Like there are no options. Like we just say like you have to do it this way, and we explain that gently, and we explain that with lots of patience and lots of empathy, but we need to limit the options because I think we all know that, you just think about your local cafe. If there might be an incentive to bring your reusable cup, but if they're always going to have that backup option of the takeaway cup, then it's hard to, fully affect change or really change behavior. So again, that's not something that we find to be a challenge at Hillside. But I imagine, again, before my time, I imagine that we did. I imagine that was a challenge at a time when people were like, well, I don't want to have to come back to the festival with my dish. I just want it to be on a plate that I can take away with me. And that was an important part of our success story, I think, was saying like, no, we're doing it this way because these are our goals and these are the results that we want to see. And just, using communication to try to explain that is why we're doing that. Yep. Um, and then just another piece about communicating about sustainability. Uh, like our artwork, we recognize that the festival is not only a awesome place to have a good time and be with your friends and family and have creative experiences, but I think we know how important those gathering spaces and those community events are for teaching and explaining, communicating about things that are important. We have a dedicated Indigenous circle at the festival. Reconciliation is an important part of our festival programming. We also offer a display area for local environmental groups and not-for-profits to talk about their specific projects, things that are important and things that are going on in our local area. And we have over 50 workshops that are offered every year, and those are always community led. And so it's interesting in, when we solicit applications from the community to present workshops at the festival. It's so interesting what comes up because it's on things that are top of mind in the local community and things that people want to share. So very often the kinds of things that you'll get at workshops at a festival like Hillside are like how to upcycle my textiles, how to build a pollinator garden, how to learn about preserving my own food. So often we're following these themes of sustainable living and like DIY efforts and things like that. And it's offering that space for community members to communicate with community members and share the things that are important. And I think that's a really important part of why festivals are such a great example of communities coming together and becoming stronger and building connections. Again, just back to our sort of like pointing to results and being having measurable pieces of information to share with people. So we have a green team at the festival. They're a communications team who also do a limited amount of fundraising for, we might say like, oh, now, our newest project is we're trying to build, this piece of infrastructure, so we're raising donations. But they can point to things at the festival that have been created through efforts from the audience and through donation efforts from the community. So this is just our example. Again, our solar water heater, which you see down there on the right. So like that was something you can see in action at the festival. It can be pointed to as something that's an example of sustainable efforts. And it's something that was created through fundraising, like through community fundraising, we were able to build that. Same with free water from the tanker. That again, that's actually I need to update this image because now that the city of Guelph offers its own water tanker, which is so great because that means they're doing that at other community events. We no longer need to have to like raise the costs to build and maintain our own water tanker. And our stage and green roof is a great example. So again, the island is within a conservation authority. We rent it every year. But we've been on the island for 40 years. We have a long-term relationship with that conservation authority. Hillside Festival actually built this main stage in about 2002. And so this is a permanent main stage that is on the island, and and it's there all the time, so it can be used by other community groups as well as by our festival. And we fundraised and specifically built it to have a living green roof so that, even the limited footprint that was removed from the island by the construction of the stage is replaced by this green roof, which is has pollinator gardens on top of it. It's a habitat for local species, and it's become a really important symbol for the festival itself, as you can imagine. That yeah, that sort of living green roof is a really great. It's literally above our heads, so we can point to it and say that this is something that was created by the community. Partnerships are really important, part of our sustainability efforts. In every community, there's going to be vendors and suppliers and volunteers working on this. And often, I think we all know that from grant writing. We all know that from event planning. We're stronger together. If we partner together, we can often create a bigger impact. Like I can just highlight, for example, there's a Guelph-based company called Fill It Forward. Our relationship started about 15 years ago because they create, reusable drinkware. And so they were the ones to actually create the latest iteration of that custom stainless steel mug. And so that partnership has just grown. They've become really, aligned and intrinsically connected to Hillside whenever we put on the festival, whenever we have that custom mug. And they've gone into impact tracking of sustainability initiatives. So the graphic that you see on the right is actually they host an online impact board for us to help us, calculate through the number of reuses that, so this number is accurate to the end of the 2025 festival, through the number of reuses that we have caused to happen because we eliminate the single-use plastics at Hillside. How many kilowatt hours of electricity have we saved? How many pounds of CO2 emissions have we saved? This partnership is so useful because, it's amazing to be able to put a graphic out like that. We're a not-for-profit. We're a small team. There's only three of us. I got a music degree over here. I'm not a scientist. So, being able to have a partnership that allows me to draw on this kind of data, it allows us to have really impactful communications, really impactful annual reports, things when we're talking to our donors and talking to our community and asking for support. I didn't need to have that knowledge and expertise within our small staff team, and we were able to get that through our partnership with Fill It Forward. Another highlight, which is more recent, is Camp Rentique, which is a women-owned camping gear rental company. Camping is a really important part of the culture of Hillside. Again, members of our volunteer program can camp on the island, and about 2,000 or 3,000 people camp directly off the island. And camping is another area, another industry that struggles with sustainability. There's a lot of like buying something for the first time, and then you don't use it, and then you got to store it, and so um, partnering with businesses like that who are, not in the same business as us, but we're obviously very aligned on our ultimate goals, is something that I think just widens the reach and helps support across the industry. And then just a little bit more about communication at the festival. Um, at the festival, we've replaced our paper program with an app that's on everyone's phone. So, we can have, you know, messaging that goes out across that device. We can have real-time updates on the impact measurements of the reuses that we're seeing, things like our MC announcements and signage on site. We're talking about our sustainability initiatives. Actually, this photo here, which I know it's kind of awkwardly cropped, but it's an example of something that we just implemented last year in 2025, which is that at every trash turnaround point, which you can see here, you can scan a QR code and see the real-time, impact tracking, and every time someone scans it, it updates with more, reuse numbers that have been used through the festival. So it's a way to sort of like bring that impact of reusing dishes and not having single-use plastic like right into the festival experience. It's right there on your phone, or it's right there being announced by the MC. And so that's an important part of sort of communicating about what our achievements are in this realm. I won't talk too much about this because I know I really want to have time for a conversation as well. But that, at Hillside, we really recognize that sustainability is about more than environmental sustainability. So that sort of the idea of, cultural sustainability, wanting to ensure that, we are, um, you know, like honoring authentic expressions of culture and allowing for cultural exchange and attracting diverse audiences is an important part of our work as well. And we, work every year to take meaningful steps in that way. So we achieve that through making sure that we program culturally diverse artists. We have a specific songwriting program that is for women and female identifying songwriters. The presentation of our Indigenous Circle, as I mentioned, and a lot of framework, infrastructure, and policies around the accessibility of the festival. So where would we go from here? I think our general philosophy is that small steps are better than no steps, and starting today is better than starting tomorrow. We are still working on lots of things. We really struggle with understanding our electricity use. It has to do, we're renting this island. We don't have access to the utility information for our electricity and utility use. So we're trying to take steps to figure out like how can we better measure our electricity use to ensure that we are either using green energy or offsetting with other activities or other purchases. We have at times had a pedal powered stage, so like a small sound system is powered by bicycles and people who want to bike. And so we are working on fundraising in order to, construct kind of have that be permanent. It's kind of been something that we've been able to have sometimes if we have the right equipment and people around to build it. Um, so we're working on that, and again, just working on, in offering a festival that's open to the public. We're responding to trends. So, for example, again, anyone who's running an event on this call likely knows alcohol consumption is really going down, which I'm not altogether disappointed about because I think it makes for a really lovely festival atmosphere. But we are seeing a lot of interest in non-alcoholic beverages, so sodas and non-alcoholic beers and seltzers, and you can't actually keg those for the most part because, again, not a scientist, but because of the sanitizing effect of alcohol, in order to serve it safely, it needs to be served in a single, an aluminum can. And so, we want to think about that. We want to be able to respond to this trend and, make sure that we're optimizing the revenue that we generate from beverage sales, but at the same time, we don't want to be going backwards, as it were, generating more aluminum waste, generating more single use waste. So those are the kinds of things that we think about. I think as society rolls on and different trends crop up, we need to think about like how can we do this in a way that is in alignment with like what we believe in our principles. And yeah, so we're working on lots of things. So I know I went a bit fast, but again, I wanted to get away from the shared screen when I can only see like four people and get to more of a conversation if folks are interested. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments, and just wanted to say thank you for the chance to share about Hillside Festival.
Kate, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Great. A
There's
little,
you packed a lot of stuff
that was a
in
little
30
fast.
minutes, man. I will say, and if there's any questions, just feel free to raise your hand electronically or physically, and we'll address it or put your questions in the chat. It's been a while since I've been to Hillside Festival, but I have to say one of the things I loved when I would go was it had a very organic energy about it. I mean, one of the things, and I don't know today if it's still true, but I noticed all the signs leading up to the island were hand painted. And the only printed one that I remember, again, it was a long time ago, no apps back then, was the sponsor board. Everything else was very organic, was very um, artistically driven, and I felt I felt I was like in another world, and
Thanks,
it
Debbie.
was really great. It was great. It was a very calming world. So yeah,
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 no, I think you're right. That exists. I think that I mean Hillside has a reputation for being a very non-commercial festival. Um, as an organizer, this is a bit of a challenge. That our audience is very, very sensitive to the idea of sponsorship. And anyone, we're all here running events. We understand how important like support from the business community and sponsorship is. So we need to do that really carefully at Hillside and make sure that we are, if it became, the TD Bank Hillside Festival, boy, our audience would have something to say about that.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, so having that sort of hand painted and handmade aspect is very important. I'm sure if there was an award for the most highly decorated festival, I feel like we would win it. So.
It's great. It's a great energy and a great feel, and it's wonderful. Linda has a question here. Where does the water from the dishwashing go?
Yeah, thank you. So it's collected and goes into a gray water tank. And it's all porta toilets on the island itself. And so our porta toilet company, when they are servicing the units, they also dispose of the gray water.
Okay, great. Stan has a question.
A couple questions actually.
Yeah.
So this is a festival, not a series, or am I seeing it that it's both? Like, is there a series of events that takes place there through the summer, or are you only talking about your Hillside Festival?
I'm just talking about our summer festival that takes place, like it takes place from a Friday through to a Sunday.
Yeah,
We
right.
do, like, we're a year-round organization. We do other events, but like what I was talking about today was
Okay.
our
Yeah.
outdoor
So
festival.
then I should lower my hand. So then the question I have would be for infrastructure, who maintains the infrastructure? Who maintains, or is there much maintenance needed for those, for your roof, for your tank? Are they portable things that move in and out? How do you work that?
Yeah, so again, so the land is owned by the local conservation authority.
Yep.
So they maintain it in terms of like mowing, and like maintaining it
Yeah.
year over year. But the permanent stage structure is our responsibility to maintain. So we're ensuring that, yeah, that it's in good repair, that, when
Okay.
when things break on it, that it gets fixed. Um, and yeah, we've got like written agreements with the conservation authority about how that's managed.
Some of the infrastructure you have to maintain. So how
Yeah.
do you have any sense of, and maybe you have a whole bunch of volunteers too that help this. I'm just thinking when you showed some of this, the shots earlier of the non-motorized vehicles helping set up and moving things around, and like the rickshaw would be, I'm assuming just for the days of the event, but that type of stuff that must increase time to get everything straightened away. So I mean, is it 50% more time? Do you have an idea like how much time is spent versus if people are driving around in small quads or small motorized vehicles, which is normally what you see at events.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, yeah, I can't really point to a number,
Yeah,
like understanding that, yeah, if we have a crew of like 10 people, we're
right,
going to set up all the stakes in the parking lot and use a rickshaw versus two people in a pickup truck.
right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can imagine that
I
it
just
would,
I just wonder.
yeah, I think we can imagine it would be faster,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think as I'm sure you can surmise, yeah, we have
Mhm.
an absolutely enormous volunteer program.
You must. Yeah.
Again, as an organizer, that actually can be a challenge. We
Yeah.
have a capacity. We can only fit 8,000 people. We have about 1,500 people who volunteer for the festival.
Yeah.
And so, at a certain point,
Yeah.
and it's like sometimes you can't say this like in the wider
Yeah.
world. The more volunteers you have, the fewer tickets you can sell.
Yeah.
So like we need to
Yeah.
we need to think about that. But I think the experience, yeah, it's become a real community experience to volunteer for Hillside, to participate in that building. So we generally don't lack for human power, which is why we
Yeah.
can be like, yeah, you 10, go take this rickshaw and go set up the parking
Right.
station. We
Okay.
don't need to worry about, adjusting and saying,
Timing or yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. I got you.
So yeah, but it's a consideration for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And Kate, talking about 8,000 people, you track everything. You sell online. Do you sell tickets online? And how do
Yeah,
you track that?
yeah, we sell primarily online. Like we have a few within the city of Guelph physical ticket outlets, but like, it is very nominal compared to the number of tickets that we sell online. And so yeah, so through our ticketing provider, we would know, yeah, we can absolutely track how many people bought tickets, how many people actually checked in, even a limited amount of like demographic information about like where they purchased their tickets from, things like that.
Great. Nora, you have a question.
Feel like I have lots of questions, but I'll just ask one. First of all, congratulations. Wow. I think what you're doing is amazing. So many aspects and so many things to think about. The wheels are kind of turning. And I love the idea of how you've incorporated these sort of sustainable approaches to everything, to the artists and to being inclusive and accessible. And speaking about sustainability of culture, like I think that's amazing that you've really kind of expanded. And I noticed at the end you said small steps are better than no steps. And I thought that was like super like a succinct way of saying it. And I know from a GMIST perspective, we often say, just start somewhere, pick something and just kind of try it and start and see how it goes. But I wonder, for folks who are coming from, maybe a rural area without access to things like public transit, or from an area, you spoke a lot about the city of Guelph, kind of already having that sustainable approach to things. So for people who are maybe coming from an area where maybe that approach doesn't feel as strong or don't have access to some of those things, do you have any advice for a good way to start? Maybe something to start with, or which aspect might be a good one to kind of choose as a starting point?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's funny because I totally understand because I'm from a rural area. Like I didn't grow up like sometimes I say this that sometimes Guelph feels like a very gentle and welcoming cult a little bit because they're just like they just sort of like assume that everybody feels this way. And I mean like I grew up in rural Ontario and again, family connections with rural New Brunswick as well. So I know that it's like yeah, in different places this might that sort of like community feeling might not be there. The short answer, I think, is like I think the two main places to start, and it's kind of whether you're doing a one-off event or something that's recurring, is like waste management. Of thinking of like can we offer waste and recycling, even if it's just landfill and recycling? And if we're offering that, can we ensure that we're not, that we're actually separating things? And can we, and can we station people to ensure that, we're not contaminating these two streams and that we're actually committing, if we're going to say we're going to recycle, we're actually committing to that and we're ensuring that the things that are going for recycling are actually recyclable. Or if your municipality has a compost program, I know that's something that's really kind of changing a lot. Like even in my rural Ontario, riding, we have composting. We didn't have that 5 years ago. And so like, is there partnerships that you can find with the municipality to just wherever we can divert from the waste that's going to landfill? I feel like that's one of the most obvious places to start, and sometimes can just be the most simple is just having a volunteer who's standing at the trash location saying, "Hey, I'm going to help you. Let's just make sure that we get all this in the right place." So that's just, I think, like a really good place to start.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, yeah. There's a question here. Do you have any specific provisions for when there is bad weather?
Yeah, so yeah, we're a rain or shine festival. The whole thing takes place outside. I mean, in the photo you saw, like we have a number of tents, like so we have 5 stages, 3 of which would be considered like our main stages, and 2 of those are completely covered over. So there are places to go, like just in terms of like patron experience. Like if we're having our festival, it starts pouring down rain, like people have place to go, to get out of the rain, but also I think, people at our festival and certainly many outdoor festivals, like I think they just have they know I think that that's part of the experience. We're rain or shine. We would only shut down if it comes to like dangerous weather, like yeah, severe weather, thunderstorms, tornadoes, things like that. So certainly I don't think any of our kind of sustainability initiatives like are affected. Certainly climate change and the increasing occurrences of severe weather and how it affects our outdoor events is like part of the conversation. But other than that, I think very much in line with yeah, what other festivals would do, try to have some tents, try to have places where people can wait out a little rainstorm or just, enjoy that it's part of the natural world a little bit as well.
So another two other questions. Do you
Yeah.
include the reusable mug with the cost of the ticket? And do you hand them out upon entry?
So they are a separate purchase, and we try to keep the cost low. We just sell them at cost. So if you are gonna, and that's only for alcohol service, like you can bring your reusable whatever bottle for any of the of the obviously reuse the water tanker. Sorry. And also the food vendors as well. And this is something I guess I didn't really touch on is that part of our food vendor agreement is that they will use our dishes, but that they'll also serve on people's owned reusable dishes. So like if there's a vendor that sells smoothies and someone says, I really like this smoothie and I want it in my reusable cup, like they will do that. And it's not that it has to be served in one specific thing. And actually we do have the ability, people can wash their own dishes at Hillside Festival. So if you bring your own reusable dishes, you can go to this little station and you can wash them. Um, but to get alcohol service, you have to have one of our reusable mugs, and so that's an additional cost. And people do bring them back. Like they're very we encourage that people bring them back year over year. So it's not like every single year everybody is buying their mug. They might bring their mug back, and that's what I meant about yeah. Like there's like special specimens from like 20 years ago, and people are like, "This is my hillside mug," and I will never, I will. You'll have to pry it out of my cold dead hand, kind of thing. Um, and yeah, so there's a lot of returning of those.
That's very cool. Um, then the next question is, you have spoken of your 5 stages. Can you briefly outline what they are and the differences? And that's from a D.
Oh yeah, like our performance stages.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes, we have 5 stages. Three of which I would call big stages. One of them is called Main, and that is actually the permanent stage. That's the permanent one with the green roof. And then we have two other large performance stages called Lake Stage and Island Stage. Those are licensed. As I mentioned, our whole festival footprint is not licensed, but Lake Stage and Island Stage are licensed. You can find some great photos on our website. So on those big stages, that would be our big bands. That would be our Tragically Hip going to Jay. Oh, he's gone. Um, the big bands that we're bringing in, they will perform on one of those stages. We've got, professional grade sound lights, and yeah, like equipment on those stages. And then we have a dedicated children's area, and so we have a stage in the children's area called the Rainbow Stage, where it's specific performances and activities for kids. And then we have another sort of smaller, more intimate stage, which we call the Sun Stage, where we would often just do sort of jam sessions, artists combined together more in the way of like maybe spoken word, comedy, and theater, things like that. So yeah, so that's the difference.
Wonderful. I don't have any other questions. I have a lot and none at the same time, you know. There's so much to ask about your festival. Are there any other questions from the maritime group? All right. Well, Kate, again, another amazing presentation. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your what you're doing, your insights, and just giving us all some, food for thought. So, with that, I
Yeah.
want to thank you so much. Nora, thank you for having us again. I'm Debbie Mann with Festivals and Events Ontario, and I hope you'll join us the same time next week with Dolores McAdam and succession planning. I believe that's the conversation we're having. And is that right, Nora? Succession planning?
Emergency preparedness.
Emergency preparedness. My apologies. And that's with Dolores McAdam. So that's it. We will see you next week.